Hi everybody, I'm Jack Reda with Future Pastimes, one of the designers of the CHOAM and Richese expansion for the 2019 edition of the classic Dune board game, published by Gale Force 9. This is the second expansion that we've done. The first one was the Ixians and Tleilaxu expansion that came out in 2020. This one, CHOAM and Richese, came out in 2022. It has those two factions in it, the advanced stronghold cards, and what we're going to talk about in this video, the leader skill cards. So I actually first had the idea for leader skills in the mid-80s when I first played the Avalon Hill edition of Dune. And I was playing the Harkonnen, and I noticed that the Piter had this interesting effect in his hair there in the artwork. And I asked my friend Greg, what's the deal with Piter? And he explained to me that Piter was a mentat, which was like a human computer. And I hadn't read Dune yet at that time. So I said, oh, great, what does Piter do in this game? And he said he doesn't do anything. He's just a 3-strength leader. And the Twofer as well was also a mentat, but also didn't do anything. So even back then I started thinking about, it'd be kind of interesting if you had some of your leaders actually did have special skills. And I have since read Dune now probably 8 times and watched the movies and the miniseries, and there's a lot of really interesting lore in Dune, and the factions bring quite a bit of that in there, but there's a lot more that's still not really part of the Dune board game. So I was always interested to find a way to add some more of those details in there, and that is what drove me to design these leader skill cards. So the way that these work is at the start of the game, you're going to be dealt, every faction will be dealt 2 leader skill cards, and you will be doing this after you get your treachery cards, but before everyone draws traitor cards, which is a little switch from how it's normally done in the setup. Normally you do traitors first, and then you get your treachery cards. But this switcheroo doesn't really impact the game in any way, but it does let the player make a more informed decision when choosing which leader skill to use, because a number of them are tied to particular types of treachery cards. So I wanted to enhance that experience. So you're going to get the 2, you're going to pick which one you're going to use, and you're also going to pick which of your leader discs you're going to assign that skill to. And you're going to put that out in front of your shield. So everyone will know that Piter is your mentat, or that Duncan Idaho is your swordmaster, or whatever leader you have assigned that skill to. Then everyone will pick their traitors. And this will have an interesting effect on the game, because if you do draw the traitor card for somebody who is a skilled leader, they make a very tempting traitor. But I think that can impact which leader you're going to pick in the first place. I know that a lot of times what I notice is that when people are picking their traitors, they tend to pick the higher strength leaders. If you've got your 4 traitor cards and one of them is somebody's 6th strength leader, that's probably who you're going to pick rather than one of their lower numbers, because that's who they're probably going to use when they're really needing to try to win a battle. And so I think that it does have an impact on it, because maybe you don't necessarily assign the skill to your strongest leader. You assign it to maybe one of your weaker ones or mid-range leaders, so that it's not, it's not going to be an obvious target for being picked as a traitor. If you've got the choice between Stilgar, who has no skill, and Shadow Mapes, who has a skill, it's a tough choice now, and who knows which way you're going to go with that. But again, depending on which skill that you have chosen, you may want to assign it to one of your stronger leaders to make them absurdly strong, or maybe just want to make it one of your weaker leaders as strong as one of your stronger leaders, because a number of these skills will increase the battle strength of your leaders depending on which treachery cards you're using or other circumstances. So let's take a little bit of a look at some of these cards, and then I'll talk a little bit more about how the leader skills work in play. So I'm going to start off with the Swordmaster of Ganaz. So the way that these work is they've got 2 effects, one over the art and one under the art. And in many cases, the effect over the art actually applies to all of your other leaders. And then the bottom effect will apply to the leader that you have assigned this skill to when they're in battle. So here's how the Swordmaster works. You're going to add +1 to your other leader discs when you're using a projectile weapon in a battle. So let's say that you have made Duncan your Swordmaster. As long as he's out in front of your shield with the leader skill, then any of your other leaders will be +1 on to their leader's strength if you're using a projectile weapon in battle. So basically, Duncan is so skilled and that he has passed on a lot of what he knows to all of your other leaders, and that's kind of how they are benefiting from that. Now, when you use Duncan in your battle plan, you just include, you put the leader disc in the battle plan, and then just include the card there as well, so that the card is basically always with that leader. And it's going to add +3 to that leader disc if you're using a projectile weapon. So if you've got Duncan in there and he's got his skill and you've got a projectile weapon like a Chris knife, well, now he's a strength 5 leader. But let's say that, you've got Stilgar is your Swordmaster and you've got a projectile weapon. Well, now he's worth a 10. So you can see how this can have a pretty big impact on the game depending on which leader has the skill and whether or not you have the appropriate card. And that's why you're going to choose your skills after you've seen what your starting treachery card is. In some cases, you say, you know what, this is so good, I have to take it even though I don't have one. I just got to make sure I try to get one in an auction at some point. And that's certainly up to you. So there's a counterpart for that. So Master of Assassins works the same way if you're using a poison weapon. And then there is some for the defenses as well. So if you have a projectile defense and your leader skill is the Pranabandhu Adept, then you get +1 to all of your leaders while this leader is out in front of your shield and you're using a projectile defense. And if you use this leader with a projectile defense in battle, they get +3 to that. And note that these are not cumulative, so it wouldn't be +4. It clearly says your other leaders get the +1, this leader gets a +3. So that's how those work. And then Killer Medic is for the poison defense. And yes, there are Killer Medics in Dune. At least they're mentioned in there. So I didn't pull this out of thin air. This one is War Master. And it's similar. The way it works is your other leaders will get a +1 if you include at least one worthless card in your battle plan. So normally you're not getting anything out of playing a worthless card. But here at least you're getting a +1. And if this leader is in the battle, you get a +3 if you have at least one worthless card in that battle plan. Now, it should be pointed out that if, let's say in this example, you've got Stilgar and he's got a worthless card in there, he's got a Jubba Cloak, which he can turn anything into a weapon because he's he's a War Master. But if he's killed in that battle, then this leader skill does not apply. So he doesn't get the +3 if he's killed in that battle. And when a skilled leader is killed, you discard the skill. But at any point later, when you are reviving a leader from the tanks, if you don't have any skilled leaders, you may choose to make that leader that you have revived a skilled leader. And you'll draw 2 skills and pick one to assign to that leader face up in front of your shield. Now, while you are leaving the leader out in front of the shield, the other leaders will benefit from any skill that, like Swordmaster, for instance, that can give them some kind of a bonus. But it does let your opponent does know that that particular leader is not in the battle. So anytime you're in a battle, you can bring that leader behind the shield. That doesn't mean you're necessarily going to use that leader. You may want to bring them in. You've got Stilgar as your Swordmaster. You bring him behind the shield. And now they're thinking, I might have to deal with a 10 strength leader in this battle. And maybe, they basically punt and say, I don't think I can win this battle, especially if I don't have a weapon. But if you end up using a different leader, then they will not benefit from that top part of the skill. So this only applies if this leader is in front of your shield. So keep that in mind, that if you do leave them out there, the other leaders will benefit if it's applicable, but your opponent will know that that particular skilled leader is not in the battle plan. So you have to decide, when do you bring them behind the shield as a bluff, or are you bringing them behind because you do intend to use them in that battle? And after the battle's over, the skilled leader goes back out of front if they're still alive. Now, some of the other leader skills work quite a bit differently, so let's take a look at that. So this one is Planetologist, and the way that this one works is it doesn't have any effect that your other leaders benefit from. Instead, your faction benefits. So you're going to add 1 to your movement to a maximum of 3, or you may move forces from 2 different territories in a single movement if they have the same destination. So that can have a pretty big impact on your movement, and you can actually act accordingly. You just have to leave this leader out in front of your shield when you benefit from that effect. So yeah, you just don't even risk that skilled leader in a battle because you like the benefit on there. But if you do use this particular Planetologist in a battle, if you reveal 1 green special card other than a cheap hero, for example, Hajar or Thumper, as part of your battle plan in place of a weapon, then you add 2 to the leader disc. So if you are in a pinch and you've got one of those green cards, and you've got Family Atomics, and you have no intention of blowing up the shield wall, you could get that +2 instead of having a weapon on there in the battle plan. So it certainly 2 more points can't hurt. Let's look at a couple others. So this is Sook Graduate, and when you win a battle, and this is when the Sook Graduate is not in the battle plan. When you win a battle and lose forces, return 1 to your reserves instead of going to the Tleilaxu tanks. And then if you have your Sook Graduate in the battle, when you win a battle and lose forces, you may save up to 3 of them from going to the Tleilaxu tanks, leaving 1 of them in the territory and returning the rest to your reserves. And again, these are not cumulative. So this is when the skilled leader is not in the battle, and this is the effect when they are in the battle plan. So yeah, you can have fewer forces that you're going to need to revive, which can be very handy. And you can dial accordingly. If you have the Sook Graduate in the battle, you know that one of those forces is going to actually stay behind, even though they were killed in the battle. So next up, we have Smuggler. And Smuggler, whenever you ship forces from off-planet to an empty territory, you may bring 1 additional force for free. So you do have to go to an empty territory. You know, if it's an empty stronghold, that's a good shipping rate. When you use your Smuggler in battle, collect 1 spice for each point of strength of this leader from the territory this battle is in when the battle plans are revealed. Again, they have to survive that battle in order to do that, but it lets you collect a lot of spice with not that many forces. In fact, you don't even have to have any forces left, and you can still, let's say that you've got Bene Gesserit leader in there. That's 5 spice that you're going to collect just for winning that battle, as long as she survives the battle. Next up, we have Rahani Decipherer. So the way this one works is if you win a battle, secretly peek at 2 random cards in the trader deck, then shuffle it. So this is giving you some information about safe leaders. Now, if you're lucky enough to draw one of your own leaders, that's especially great. But drawing information about other leaders, that's stuff you can sell, that information you can sell for spice. You can say, look, I just saw a safe leader for the Atreides faction, so if you'd like to know who that is, bribe me 3 spice, or whatever the case may be. Now, if you use your Rahani Decipherer in the battle, if you win the battle, you may draw 2 trader cards from the deck. Keep 1 card by revealing an unused trader card you hold, and then shuffling it back, and the card you drew back into the deck. So this is a way to kind of switch out which trader that you have. And again, you're finding out information about leaders, maybe yours, maybe someone else's. So, and this can be especially helpful as well in a game with the Tleilaxu, because they are going to be cycling through that trader deck, and it's good for you to find out if you have any leaders. You can even, if you draw one of your own leaders, you can set them aside so that you know you have a safe leader for the whole rest of the game. So that is a lot of fun. We have next the Diplomat. So the Diplomat, you may count 1 worthless card in your battle plan as the defense your opponent used in that battle, provided you played no defense, and then you discard it afterward. So yeah, that's another good use for worthless cards, is that you can use your diplomatic abilities, and that's why you leave the Diplomat out and they're not in the battle. Now, if the Diplomat is in the battle, A number of your undialed forces up to the strength of this leader may retreat to an empty, adjacent, non-stronghold territory if you lose the battle. So this is kind of similar to the Sook Graduate, but you're able to negotiate the safe retreat of some of your forces in case you lose that battle, provided your diplomat survives. All right, next up we have the Bureaucrat. The Bureaucrat, once per phase, if another player makes a payment to any player other than you of at least 5 spice, you may force 2 of the spice to go to the spice bank. This is a little check on factions like the Emperor or the Guild or even the Tleilaxu. They're making a lot of spice. You at least once per phase, you can truncate a little bit of that. Now, if you use your Bureaucrat in the battle, your opponent subtracts 1 from their battle total for each stronghold they occupy, not counting advisors. So especially somebody who's going for the win, if they're going to fight against your Bureaucrat, they're going to have to dial higher accordingly. Next up, we have the Sandmaster. So if you move any number of your forces into or through a territory containing spice, you may immediately collect 1 spice from that territory, once per territory. So just moving around through the desert, you're able to pick up a little bit of spice. And then if you use your Sandmaster in a battle, add 3 more spice to a territory you are in that has spice after winning a battle there. So if you go into a territory with some spice, and fight it out with your Sandmaster, and you've got a good number of forces there with you, it could be a big payday. So if you've got a situation where you think you can win some battles, and then, throw that Sandmaster in there, and you're going to pick up quite a bit of spice. All right, 2 more. We've got the Spice Banker. This is similar to the Bureaucrat. Once per phase, if another player makes a payment to the Spice Bank of at least 4 spice, you gain 1 spice, placing it in front of your shield and collecting it in the Mentat pause. So the Bureaucrat was just making sure that somebody's not gaining 5 spice at one point. They're only going to get 3, but the Spice Banker actually is skimming off the top. But that's only for payments made to the Spice Bank, not payments made to another player. So if you use your Spice Banker in a battle, you may spend 1 to 3 of your spice as part of your battle plan and add that amount to your leader disc. So similar to the like the Sword Master who gets a +3, you can make a leader +3, but you have to spend spice. This is separate from any spice paid to count your forces as full strength. So in the advanced game, if you do have to spend spice if you want your forces to be full strength when you're dialing them. But the Spice Banker himself can also be a little bit stronger. And this brings us to the last one, Mentat. So the way this works is before making battle plans, you may ask your opponent if they have a specific weapon, for example, Crysknife or Poison Tooth, in hand. They must show you that card if they have it, or another treachery card if they don't. And they are not required to use that weapon if they do have it. So this is an interesting effect that you can use to get some information about cards that they have. If you're not sure what kinds of weapons that they have, you could get lucky by naming a specific weapon. But even if you don't name it, you're still going to get to see something which could be useful. And you can, this is when you're not using this Mentat. But here's the interesting thing is that this is before battle plan. So technically, after you use this effect, you could pick up your Mentat and put them into the battle plan. And this is really the only leader skill where that is true. Now, when you do use your Mentat in the battle, they just get a +2 to their leader disc. So it's pretty straightforward, just a simple effect. So here you could get the benefit of some card knowledge, and you could say like, oh, do you have a Crysknife? And if they say yes, or they show you something worse, then you can say, you know what, maybe I won't risk my Mentat in this battle. I'll put somebody else in there. So that is how the leader skills work. So it's just one more little mini advantage, or in some cases, 2 mini advantages that your faction can have. And when some of these skills are paired up with certain factions, it can make them really interesting and strong. If you've got Fremen and they have Planetologist, that can be a really interesting effect where they can move more, or they could move 2 groups, because a lot of times you're starting with the Fremen and they're pretty spread out, especially if they start going after spice blows or whatever, and sometimes it's hard to aggregate your forces together. But here with the planetologist, it's actually a little bit easier because you can say like, all right, we'll just move all these guys to Tabor and it's done. So yeah, the different combinations of skilled leaders with different factions, I think really puts some interesting new twists on the game. And it's a fun way to jazz up a session. Yes, you can have a situation where you've got Swordmaster Jessica with the Kwisatz Haderach. So she's a 5, and now she's a 6, 7, 8, and a 9, 10. So she's a 10 strength leader who cannot be traitored. It's pretty powerful, and yes, I have seen it in a game. Interestingly, though, they did not win that game. So, nothing is a guarantee in Dune. There's always something. There's always a bigger fish. So that's the leader skills. Let me know what you think of the leader skills, or if there are other interesting elements of the Dune universe that could have been a leader skill. I did kind of comb through looking for everything that looked interesting to me that I could make into a skill. So 14 is pretty good, and I like that it added some of those really interesting details that are not really otherwise part of the game. But yeah, I want to read your comments and see what you think, and let me know if there's other stuff that you want to see videos on, and thanks for watching.